Hello again, Frank from the Old Town Coleman Center. In today's video, I'd like to show you how to replace the gasket in a one-piece fuel filler cap, like on this 1986 Model 286 Lantern. Not only am I going to show you how to remove the old gasket without damaging the cap, I'm going to show you how to make a tool that will hold the cap securely while you work on it. That way it won't slip, you won't damage the threads, you won't damage the finish, and you won't send a screwdriver through your hand. So go get yourself a cup of coffee, put it in a cup like this if you have one, and I'll be right back. Welcome back. All right, let's talk about these one-piece filler caps. So these first appeared in Canada around 1965 and in the United States around 1970. Previously, they had three-piece filler caps and they look like this. It has a center screw. You take the screw out. There was an insert on the inside that looked like this with a gasket in it. And all you have to do is burn that out with a torch, replace it, and it was piece cake, easy to do. Not so much with these filler caps, but there's even more fun. Something you may not have realized, these caps come in different sizes. So look at these pictures that I have here. Look at the two on the top. It's hard to tell in a picture, I know, but if you were to measure the outside diameter of those two top caps, they both measure exactly 15/16 of an inch. The two caps on the bottom measure exactly 1 inch in diameter on the outside. Also, if you look at the two caps on the left, that center stud, excuse me, that center stud that gets smashed down and crimped on the gasket so it stays in place, on the left side, those are much smaller than the ones on the right side. And that also is going to become important later in the video, and we'll talk about that. So the gasket in these old caps is going to be hard and dry and brittle, and I promise you it's going to be a pain in the ass to get it out. Now, you can actually put it down on your workbench and grab a tool and just go after it, but if you do that, the cap is going to slip on you, you're going to mar the finish, and there's a good chance you're going to send whatever tool you're using through your hand. We don't want to do that. So a number of years ago, I was reading my emails and I received one from a gentleman in Connecticut named Rory. Rory had a brilliant idea. He was getting the decks on his house replaced, and he picked up a piece of the decking material and he felt how soft it was, and a tool came to mind, and he made that tool. He sent a picture of it to me, and I made one out of a scrap piece of wood. It's just that simple. This is the Rory tool, and you can see there's this piece of scrap wood. It has a hole right there, and that's where you set your filler cap. Then you'll notice there's a slice down the center that creates jaws. It's a simple flex tool. All you do is put it in your bench vise and it will squeeze around the cap, hold it nice and tight. It won't mar the finish because it's nice soft wood. It can't slip in there, and you can hold the cap safely and you're not going to hurt yourself. Let me show you how it works. It's just this simple. You just set this in your bench vise. You take a one-piece filler cap, set it down in there like that, push it down to the bottom, tighten it up, and it is not going to come out. You can wrench on this thing all day long and you're not going to slip and damage the surface of it. You're not going to hurt yourself, and it'll hold it nice and tight for you. A great tool. Let me show you how I make it. It's as simple. I just took a piece of scrap, 1x3. As you can see, I drew a center line through it. Near the end on that line, I drilled a 1-inch hole. 1-inch speed boring bit. You can also use a 1-inch Forstner bit. You don't want to go all the way through the wood. You need to leave a little bit of a shelf for it to set on. So using a bit like this or a Forstner bit, which has a complete flat bottom, go about halfway through the stock, and you'll have a hole that looks about like that. You may have to take a file and enlarge it to get the cap to fit really well. But after you're done with that, all you do is I ran this through the table saw, just take a hand saw, and cut all the way through the hole and beyond a little bit, and that creates the jaw for you. Then you put it in your bench vise and it'll flex. There's only one problem with this idea. Remember earlier I told you some caps were 1 inch and some were 15/16. So if you take this wrench, or this Rory tool with a 1 inch hole that I cut in it, and you try to put a, let's see, which one of these, I have one of them here, is a, this cap is only 15/16 in outside diameter. So if I put it in a 1 inch hole and I clamp down on it, it's still nice and loose. You can buy 15/16 inch drill bits and put a second hole on it if you wanted to. But what I do if I find I have this cap, I just take a couple pieces of paper and just stick it down in there like that, and then I set the cap inside of that and then clamp down. And she gets nice and tight. So you can do it that way. Okay, before I start picking away at this gasket, I want to show you the shape of the inside of the cap because it's pretty important. This one right here, I'll show you a picture there. You'll notice, it's hard to see, but in this picture there, the gasket is in this cap. But you can see the shape of it, and it's kind of odd. And rather than try to show you with that little picture, you have to put up with my poor artistry skills. But this is a cross-sectional of that gasket, or that cap, I mean. The gasket's in red. Two things you need to notice about this. If you look straight down on the cap, you cannot see this part of the gasket because of this. And that's that center stud that has the stamp in it that retains the cap down. You cannot get a tool up under here. You have to remember that. The other thing you have to remember, and this is really important, these threads over here. Most fuel filler caps are made of brass, and if you take a steel tool and you rake these threads that are made of brass with that steel tool, you're probably going to damage them. And what's going to end up is you're going to have a cap that scratches as it goes on and comes off. It doesn't feel right, it doesn't sound right, and it really messes it up. You don't want to go there. So, two things. You have to be able to get to this corner down here. That's where because we need to get under the gasket, so the best way to approach is from under here. And whatever tool you use, when you're trying to pull this thing out, you absolutely can't not let it rake these threads. Okay? Okay, let's talk about the tools that you're going to use to do this. So, over the years, I've collected a number of picks and screwdrivers and sharp knives and all kinds of weird little tools that everybody finds useful. But in all of these, I always had problems picking out this gasket because the tool was just not the right shape, or it was too weak, it would bend or something. So I went down to Harbor Freight and I found exactly what I'm looking for. Hold on. This guy right here came from Harbor Freight. It is a 4-piece mini pick and hook set, and the part number on it is 63697. I'll put that down below the description also. This is just a standard set of picks, but I bought it for a reason, because one of these picks is perfectly shaped and it looked pretty durable when I saw it, so I bought it. And I've been using it for about a month now, and yep, it works really well. I'm very impressed. So out of these 4 tools, this is the one that I wanted. And the reason I wanted this, it's the right shape, and when I put it down inside of that cap, it's not so long that I can tilt it sideways to rake the threads. I don't want to do that. So I'm going to use this pick. I'm also going to have another pick there, because sometimes you'll find that as it start breaking it out, it starts to move and you need to hold it in place. So maybe a second pick. I also use a small pair of needle nose pliers. This old hard and dry gasket gets easier to work with when it's hot, rather than hit it with a torch or a heat gun. What I do is I put them in my dehydrator. You can put it in your oven. I get it up to about 130, 140 degrees, something I can still hold in my hand, but I know that gasket's going to be soft. I've had the filler cap that I'm going to work on today in the oven for about an hour now, so that gasket should be nice and soft. So let me put on a GoPro so you can see what I'm doing. I'll go get the cap and we'll pull it out. Okay, so I got my cap out of the oven. It's about 140 degrees, and it just softens up the rubber a little bit. I've got it in the Rory tool. It's clamped down on my vise, and I'm ready to work on it. I got all my picks. So the first thing we have to do is get all the way to the bottom of this so we can get a tool underneath of it. You can really wrench on this, try to get your tool to the bottom and then turn it. I've seen a lot of people figure out ways, or try to figure out ways to cut this so they can get under it. You can do it however you want to do it, but there's one way that I've found that's real easy to do, and it takes no time at all, and it's by using one of these. Get a small drill bit. You're not going to drill through the cap, so you don't have to worry about that. But I'm going to try to keep the GoPro where you'll be able to see it. But what I'm going to do is I'm just lightly going to set this on the rubber and then let the drill bit take care of it for me. The drill bit is not big enough to hurt the threads, and it's certainly not going to be pushed in hard enough to go through the cap. Okay, now if you look at the bottom of that, if you can see it, hopefully you can. I can see the bottom of the cap now. I've cut a hole in it, so now I'm all the way to the bottom. Now I can get my tool in there under the gasket and start lifting it out. So here's this tool. And you remember I told you this tool was just a perfect shape. This is what I was talking about. I can get it under there like that, and when I rotate it, see it's just not really long enough unless I go all the way to the side. It's just not long enough to reach the threads on the outside, so it's a really safe tool. It's really heavy, it's very durable, and it's been working well for me. So anyway, I got a hole there. I want to work this underneath. Remember, I can't see in here, so that's where I'm shooting for, is right on that inside corner I was telling you about. Now I know you're not going to be able to see through this GoPro, and I'm just going to try to keep my hands out of the way so you can see what's going on. I can see that it's starting to lift just a little bit. It is really wedged in there, and so I'm going to take another pick and hold it in place. Get this pick under there and start pulling on it to get it to come up. There it is. Okay, I don't know if you can tell, but I got a little piece of it up. And now I'm going to grab that with my pliers. Sometimes if the leather or the rubber is soft enough after the oven, it will all come out in one piece. And that's really lucky if you do that. I made this same video yesterday, and I pulled the gasket out for you. And once I had it out, I realized I forgot to turn the GoPro on. Oh boy, finally got it. Okay, there's what she looks like. No gasket. Now we can replace the gasket. So this is what The gasket looks like that you'll get from Old Coleman parts for a one-piece gasket. This is a gasket for a three-piece, and you'll notice that the one-piece is much thicker. That's why it was so difficult to remove. So I told you earlier that there was a couple differences in the filler caps, and one of the differences was the inside of it. That retainer for the gasket was a different size. Some caps you will get the Old Coleman parts replacement cap. You'll set it in there, it'll fall all the way to the bottom, and if you turn the cap over, it'll fall out in your hand. It won't hold it in there. That inside portion is just not large enough to hold the new gasket. So what you can do with that is just a little RTV or adhesive on the bottom of it, set it down into place, let it sit up, and it'll hold it fine. But on most of them, it's going to be almost as difficult to put it in as it was to get it out. To put it in, you don't want to use a screwdriver because they're pretty sharp. I use a kind of a same as a screwdriver, but it's not quite as blunt and sharp on the ends. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to tuck the edges in all the way around the outside and then the inside and get it nice and flat without cutting it. Okay, finally got her flat. Okay, hopefully you can see down in there. So I hope you liked the video. If you did, please give me a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel. You can find me at www.oldtowncoleman.com. You can also find me on Facebook and Instagram. And until next time, keep them burning.